LSU, Iowa State, a 6-11 matchup here between two teams that I think stink. LSU -5 across the board is the opener. Right now, total sitting at 125. This is going to be a snoozer. Both teams offensively, absolute dreck. Conference play, both teams completely fell apart in offense. 98.7 per 100 possessions for LSU against SEC opponents. Iowa State, a dismal 94.9 in Big 12 play, where they play some pretty good defense in conference. Here's the thing. LSU deserves to be favored, but by 5 seems strong, and the market responded and such because it's down to 4.5 or 4. But some of these numbers for the Cyclones and all, especially in conference play, the offensive rebounding rate, 25.3, 10th in the conference, very bad. They did not get to the free throw line, 10th in Big 12 play, 25.5. How about this, though? In terms of turnover rate, 20.3% of their offensive possessions, the Cyclones, they turned it over against conference opponents. This is an LSU defense that led the SEC in defensive turnover rate. That was the 4th best defense in the SEC and ended up finishing 5th in overall defensive efficiency. Again, understand that Iowa State is the underdog here, but you go through some of the offensive numbers for LSU, and it's just as bad, man.
You're absolutely right. You know, the one thing that has to be discussed, though, when it comes to LSU, Will Wade gets fired by the LSU administration. How does that impact this Tigers team? I want to see how that plays out. You know, LSU is one of those teams in the first month of the season, you go, wow, these guys have a chance to be a challenger for the SEC crown. They really fell off. Pinson is dealing with an injury. Remember, he hurt his hand in the tournament. Pay attention to how he goes. I think that'll be crucial in this matchup. I think the number's a little bit high right now at 5, with LSU being the 5-point favorite. I just don't want to lay this with this team. But Iowa State is a hard team to back at this point in time based on the way Otzelberger's offense has performed.
Yeah, and to give you an idea, too, because we were talking about this off the air, so they get that 76-68 win over Missouri. At one point in that game, they opened up, I believe it was a 32-8 lead over Missouri, allowed the Tigers to not only cut it back into 10, but then, of course, end up only winning by 8. Like, this is an LSU team that, while they're very good defensively, their offense is going to hit some streaks where they are awful, god-awful.
I would agree with you. And one thing with LSU, they're athletic, they can defend. It should be a fun new game to watch. This is a game, though, I'll tell you, I'm hoping Iowa State gets out to like a 5-6-0 lead early on. I will take LSU. Go ahead.
And by the way, no, just not to cut you off, but like that 5-6 point lead, like let's say it's like 5-0. Yeah. It's going to be like 5 minutes into the first half, like 10 minutes into the first half, you know?
I think LSU's a little bit more efficient on the offensive. And Iowa State, though, man, you were right. There's no Hilton magic for this team when they were playing up in Ames. Been inconsistent. I'm just not a big fan of this team.
Yeah, and that is fair. Well, I mean, it's Alabama, but against Alabama, no, actually, never mind. I was talking about the Arkansas game. The Arkansas game, LSU ended up losing that one 77-76. That's a pretty good defensive team in Arkansas. So LSU's got some flashes here and there, but man, some of the games that I have seen from them, and they too turn the ball over at a really high rate. I would expect, so again, this total is at 125 right now. Across the board, some 124.5 are starting to appear. And actually, this is the cool part again. I'll reemphasize this for those who are just joining us. You know, the spreads, they've been set now for a couple of hours. They're starting to kind of tighten up here a little bit, right? You're not seeing that much of a difference in terms of some of these shops. But Amal, if your total's better, this is where you can find your advantage early on when these numbers are getting set. For this game, for example, there's a 126 on the board, and there's a 124.5 on the board. So if you want to bet this over, you want to bet this under right now, you should be able to get the best number available to you right now.
I tend to agree with you. I mean, this is really interesting in terms of what your options are. And you talked about it. This is where you kind of got to seize those things if you like it already.
8-9 matchup, San Diego State and Creighton. Love to get your thoughts here on this one. So Creighton initially opens up as about a 2-point underdog, depending where you look, 1.5. Now 2 across the board. I'll say that's the consensus number with a total of 119.5 or 120.5. Offense will be hard to come by in this game between these two. San Diego State is a terrible offensive team. They have been all year long. And Creighton, of course, losing their lead guard Nembhard. It has hurt their offense to a certain extent, but they're starting to get used to it without him all.
They played a lot better. They really impressed me in the Big East tournament. They had an opportunity to win this whole thing. Came up a little bit short. Obviously, no surprise against a great team like Villanova. But I tend to think this is a tough game to call. I like the Aztecs a lot. I'm a big Matt Bradley guy. But to me, the problem is inside, they're just inconsistent in terms of whether it's a rope or whomever it may be, Mensa. They can't finish consistently around the basket, JVT. Mm-hmm. I think there could be a difference for this team. Pullum's been awesome in terms of his pull-up game. I don't know if there's a better player in college basketball off of one leg than him on a 17-foot jumper, but I'm going to stay away from this one. This is one of those games I want to catch a team down 7 or 8 in play. and take a plus 6.5.
Yeah, Pulliam, you mentioned one of the nicest floaters I've seen, but he never shoots. Like, that's the problem. He has like zero confidence when it comes to shooting that thing. Creighton, big issues with turnovers, and that's held them down offensively. But as I mentioned, getting used to it without playing without Nembhard, they have covered 3 straight and 4 out of their last 5. And one of those games, of course, Providence, they got blown out by the Friars. That was the first game without Nembhard. Since then, though, covering those games and winning, and then of course blowing out Providence in that 85-58 semifinal matchup.
The 7-10 with USC and Miami, a really short spread there. USC favored by just 1.5 points.
Yeah, I like Miami in this spot. I'm a big Jim Larrañaga fan. I think he's a tremendous coach. I think he's a better coach than Andy Enfield. And I think that is going to be shown. Andy Enfield is a tremendous recruiter. Obviously, he's known for his run that he took Florida Gulf Coast on that got him the USC job. Last year, USC was able to get to the Elite Eight where they ultimately bowed out to Gonzaga. I think this is just a different team. And we talked about it a little bit when this bracket was revealed. And some people might be surprised, Stormy, to say, well, why is USC a 7 seed? Because they're a bit of a paper tiger. I think they're a bit fraudulent, and I think this is an opportunity where you look at a USC team down the stretch, got blown out by Arizona in a high-profile game at home, lose their regular season finale to UCLA, don't cover, get the win, come back to beat Washington, and then lose by double figures to UCLA. This is a team that needed double overtime, just like 2 weeks ago to beat Oregon State, who went, winless? Or I think they won 1 game.
They had 3 wins all year.
So what are we doing here with this USC team? Obviously, they've got Isaiah Mobley, who is a elite shot blocker, but I think Miami, I liked what I saw from them in the conference tournament. They needed overtime to beat it. Not so great Boston College team, which is fair, but I like the guard play there with the Hurricanes. I like the coaching matchup against Andy Enfield. I think Miami should win this matchup against USC.
I agree with the thought that the Trojans are a bit of a paper tiger. I think they rely on their height and their size a little bit too much. The foul shooting, a glaring issue with them. They don't force many turnovers, a lot of things.
And remember, they started 13-0, so they got inflated in the rankings, but as Chris Angels will let you know, he makes the ratings, not the rankings, and that's why I think you're seeing them. Ken Pom was never in love with them. The advanced market never really was a big fan of USC, and you're seeing that now, getting the 7 seed despite going 26-7 this year.
Auburn, let's talk about this. So I think this is fascinating for a couple of reasons. So Auburn, we don't spend a lot of time on. Jacksonville State, 17 was the open. Other spots opened as high as as low as 15.5. The reason why this is interesting, Auburn has been god-awful on the road. God-awful on the road. Now they're 16.5 with a total of 139.5. I mean, does this translate here because you thought, neutral setting, maybe not? Well, no, it did. It popped up again in the SEC tournament for Auburn, losing that game to Texas A&M. Like, do you trust this team on the road here, Amal? Outside of the matchups, they clearly have a problem with playing away from home.
Completely agree with you. I've been saying this for the last month about this Auburn team. I think they have a chance to probably be the 3rd or 4th best team in the the NCAA tournament from the SEC. I thought Kentucky and Tennessee are far better situated to make a deeper run. I think Arkansas can make a deeper run than this Auburn team. JVT, to your point, they have a tough game in Como. They win by 1 or 2 points. They win on a last possession against Georgia in a tight basketball game. These are 2 bottom feeders in that league. I just don't buy into Auburn away from home. Look, in this game, they're going to be able to win this one. I don't know if they cover 16.5. I think they are very capable of doing it when you look at the size of Smith and Kessler. But they don't shoot the ball well from the three-point line. And you don't want to use all your bullets. Hopefully, if you're an Auburn backer, that they don't shoot well just in this game alone.
Big thing you can take advantage of, Jacksonville State, dead last in the country in free throw defense, 77.4%. Talk about luck. That's bad luck right there.
Yeah, I took the 8 with Colgate. This might be trendy, and Wisconsin is a team that, give them credit, won the Big Ten regular season, but you look at how they finished, Stormy. They lost and closed out with a loss to Nebraska in an opportunity, by the way, at home to clinch the outright Big Ten championship. So because of that, they ultimately, fall to the 2 line. They're bounced early in the Big Ten tournament. So you look at Colgate, another veteran team coming out of the Patriot League, really cruised their way through that conference tournament, beat Navy in the championship by 16. This is a team that can shoot incredibly well. Effective field goal percentage at number 11. They are the second best three-point shooting team in the country at 40%. So to me, when I'm going to take a flyer on an upset or one of these dogs, I love to find a veteran team that shoots the ball really, really well, and that's what you're getting in the Colgate Raiders. Once again, you look down that roster, senior, and they haven't lost a game, Stormy, since January 28th. They're trending in the right direction. Maybe they do become a little of that trendy underdog. It's possible, but I think this is a good spot. Catch the 8. Those numbers are moving. Ken Pom makes this a 7-point game, and the biggest thing for me with Wisconsin is Johnny Davis's health. If he's not fully healthy, this is a completely different Wisconsin team. They love to win close games. Hey, if they win a close game, I'm cool with it. Take the 8 with Colgate.
Well, and another thing, too, just with regards to Wisconsin, is we talked about Providence earlier and their luck factor. Wisconsin's another team that's top 10 in Ken Pomeroy in terms of that luck rating. The Badgers have played 21 games this year that were decided by 8 points or fewer. So I like where your thought is at 100% with regards to that matchup. Another, go ahead.
And real quickly, though, I mean, if you, as you see it in the NCAA tournament, and I would say that Colgate is worth a little bit of a flyer on the money line, because if they get hot, you've got an opportunity. One caveat, though, is that this game is being played in Milwaukee, about a 2.5-hour drive from Madison. Obviously, if you graduate from Madison or you are a Wisconsin fan, you probably live in Wisconsin or Madison. So there's plenty of red that'll be at Fiserv Forum for that game. So not an ideal location for Colgate, but I do like the fact that they are an elite shooting team. If they get hot, they've got an opportunity. So I do think at 8 is certainly worth a play, and we'll see where the market ultimately trends with Colgate. But that was my first bet, and only at this point in time.
Providence. Circa opens them up 3. South Point DraftKings open them up 2. Right now on the board 2 with a total of 150. They are taking on South Dakota State. Now, this is, to be fair, because South Dakota State's going to be a sexy selection here, and a lot of it will be framed as Providence topping the luck factor for Ken Pom, right? You can't keep winning these single-digit games. By the way, we saw it come to a head. As I mentioned, I was on Creighton in that Big East tournament game where Creighton blew them out 85-58. But make no mistake about it, folks, South Dakota State is a damn good team. Offensively, they're one of the better ones in the country. They finished 12th in terms of overall offensive efficiency, dominated their conference in terms of offensive efficiency, 122.9. They can shoot the ball extremely well, 45% from deep, and led the country in three-point shooting. While the way to frame it might be Providence's due here, Amal, I think it's also South Dakota State's a really good team.
You look at Wilson in terms of what he's been able to do for this team, outstanding. You referenced the three-point shooting. This team is tremendous. They're very efficient in terms of how they move the ball. They're going to take the best shot available. I would disagree with the Ken Pom perspective on Providence in this sense. I think there is an art, and credit goes to teams that know how to win close games. I think there's a certain level of calmness with this team. However, I think South Dakota State's a far better team than people realize if they haven't seen them play. Man, this is a good basketball team. I know people say, well, it's an upset based on seeding. Look, in a one-game scenario, I don't look at it as that much of an upset. I thought Providence really benefited from how dominant they were at the Dunkin' Donuts Center this year, losing only one game against Villanova. They did play well back at the Pavilion when they lost that game, tight one against Villanova. But to me, I don't think they're quite as good away from home. And then A.J. Reeves got banged up in that Creighton game. He's questionable in this game. That's 10 points you're looking at potentially losing. Horkler's the one guy that can knock down three-point shots for them. Durham's got to play well, and so does Watson. And from a free throw standpoint, you give a big edge to South Dakota State.
And when you talk about luck, too, it's just usually teams that have sustained success in close games, coin flip games. That's when you talk about like luck, for lack of a better term. The overtime win over DePaul, you lose to Villanova, then follow that up with the overtime win over Butler, the triple overtime marathon against Xavier. Yeah. Like that's Providence. That's what you're talking about when you talk about luck here with the Friars.
Get prepared for all the madness with VSiN's tournament betting guide, daily best bet emails, plus full access to VSiN through April 5th for only $19 at VSiN.com/madness.